Hey guys, enjoy these new 20 stories. We hope you enjoy them. Let us know your thoughts. And as always, most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button too. It's free and does so much for us. We're forever grateful. Now to the stories.
Okay, so I matched with Jenna on a rainy Thursday night while half watching a documentary I wasn't even interested in. Her profile was filled with these super dramatic, clever little quotes, and she had this chaotic, hot energy that I found weirdly addictive. You know the type: big eyes, captions like "Don't try to fix me, I've being broken," and 5 photos that looked like they were shot for a magazine. She gave off this vibe like she knew something you didn't, so I swiped right. We started chatting that same night. She was funny, like actually funny, not in that forced way where people try too hard. I remember thinking, finally, someone who gets it. We didn't waste any time. She asked me out the next day and picked the spot herself, some dim sum place in this tiny alley I'd never even noticed before. Felt kinda cool, like she had her own hidden map of the city. The first date was weird in that it felt like an interview, but flirty one. Like she'd tilt her head and go, "So what's your biggest red flag?" and laugh. I figured she was just quirky. I can roll with quirky. She'd pause a lot to look at her phone, which bugged me, but whatever. People are glued to them nowadays. It was chill. We walked for a while after dinner, and she asked me if I had any irrational fears. I told her I get nervous around parrots. She cracked up and said, "That's gold," but didn't explain why. I remember thinking, huh, okay, odd compliment. We ended up going on 3 dates in total. The second one was at a cat cafe, even though I told her I was mildly allergic. She said she'd bring allergy pills, which she did, so I figured that was sweet. Looking back, though, she never really engaged much. More like she was watching me. I'd say something dumb like how I thought the orange tabby looked judgmental, and she'd smirk and write in her notes app. Said it was for a project. I assumed she was in school or something. I even joked she was profiling me like I was a character study, and she just grinned like it wasn't even a joke. Third date, she brought a mic, like she straight up clipped a mic to her jacket and said it was for audio journaling. I thought she was into sound design or maybe just eccentric, and I didn't want to be the guy who freaks out over artsy people doing artsy things. She kept saying how I talk like a sitcom character and that I move with too much shoulder. I laughed it off. I mean, I move how I move. Fast forward a week later. I was at work, just minding my own business, scrolling through Instagram stories on break, when a friend sent me this anonymous dating blog post titled "Shoulders, Dim Sum, and Parrot Phobias." I froze. It was me. There was no question. Word for word, it had details only I'd said. She twisted everything, though. She said I had the energy of someone who still owns cargo shorts unironically, and described my laugh as a dying vacuum. She even quoted something I said about my mom and made it sound like I was a basement dweller with unresolved mommy stuff. She'd written like it was some kind of experiment. And the worst part, her blog was huge, like 300 followers huge. And in the comments, people were going in. "This guy sounds like a walking 2006 YouTube video," one said. Another, "I can smell the Axe body spray from here." And she'd responded to them with laughing emojis and inside jokes I now realized were all about me. I was mortified. I confronted her, obviously. Slid into her DMs with more rage than grammar. She responded with something like, "Relax, it's satire. Nobody knows it's you." Which, okay, may be true to the random reader, but my friends knew. They connected the dots. One even called me Parrot Boy for an entire weekend. Here's what really messed me up. I started going back through her blog, like obsessively. She'd done this before. So many posts where the guy would sound exaggerated, like she was turning him into a character. Sometimes she'd include fake conversations she never actually had with them, just to make a point or a punchline. And every post ended with this catchphrase she used: "Another date, another disaster." It was her brand. I talked to a girl I knew who also dated girls, and she said Jenna had a reputation in certain online circles for being content over connection. That phrase stuck with me. I realized she never wanted a relationship or even just fun. She wanted material. I was the script. It made me rethink a lot of stuff, like all the times I thought I was being funny or cute, and how she probably just saw it as filler. She'd exaggerated how I dressed, how I talked, even invented a moment where I supposedly asked her if cats had belly buttons. I never said that, but in her version, I did, and people were tagging it and making memes. I debated asking her to take it down, but I knew she wouldn't. She'd just post about me again. Date 36 tried to DMCA me, that kind of thing. So I just stopped reading. Blocked her, muted the blog, told my friends to stop sending me screenshots. The thing that stuck, though, was how she got away with it because it was technically anonymous. I couldn't do anything about it. People loved her content. They didn't care if it was real or not. And honestly, part of me got paranoid that every girl I dated after that would be doing the same thing, turning me into some inside joke I'd never be in on. I haven't opened a dating app in months. I met Mike at a random game night my friend dragged me to because her trivia team needed an extra person. I wasn't even planning to go. I was in sweats, hadn't washed my hair, and was ready to spend the night watching people argue about baking shows on YouTube. But she bribed me with free pizza and I caved. And honestly, I'm kind of glad I did because Mike was a one person there who didn't immediately dive into board game politics. Everyone else was super intense about the rules. He just sat next to me and made dumb jokes the whole time. He was really sweet, not like overly charming or fake, but thoughtful. Soft-spoken, super observant, a little too into herbal tea. He didn't make me feel like I had to try hard, which was rare, especially since I'd mentioned pretty early in the conversation that I had an autoimmune thing that sometimes messes with my energy levels. Most people get awkward or start asking weird medical questions, but he didn't. He just nodded and said, "I get it. That stuff can be heavy." And that was it. We started texting that night. He was one of those good texters, timely responses, funny but not try hard and never made it weird. We met for coffee a few days later, and it was genuinely one of the best dates I'd had in a while. He listened, like actually listened. Asked me questions that weren't surface level. And he remembered stuff, like 2 days after I mentioned I sometimes get joint pain when it rains, he texted, "Hope today wasn't too rough with the weather." At first, I thought I hit the jackpot. He cooked me dinner on our third date, this whole thing with low sodium broth and anti-inflammatory ingredients. I thought it was super sweet at the time, even though it was kind of a weird vibe for a third date. He kept saying stuff like, "I just want to support your health, and I've seen how hard it can be for people." I asked him what he meant by that, and he told me he used to date someone with chronic migraines and learned a lot from the experience. Again, it seemed like a red flag in the moment. But then things started feeling a little off. Like he always wanted to help. All the time. Even when I didn't need it. I casually mentioned I had a doctor's appointment, and suddenly he'd offer to drive me there, sit in the waiting room, take notes for me. I appreciated the effort, but I hadn't even hinted that I needed that level of support. Then one day I told him I started working out again, light stuff, just to build some strength back, and he got weirdly quiet, then said, "Just be careful. I don't want you to burn yourself out and spiral." Spiral. I laughed it off, but something about that stuck in my head. It was like he wanted me to stay unwell. Not in a malicious way, but in this subtle need kind of way. The more I started taking care of myself and doing better, the more he seemed disconnected, less flirty, less engaged, and more focused on how I might be overdoing it. And then came the weird binder thing. Yeah, a binder. He came over one night with a plastic binder full of printed articles about chronic illness management, caregiver support strategies, and disability benefit info. It was like he made me a recovery syllabus. I hadn't asked for any of it. He even color-coded the sections. Said it was just in case things ever got worse and I needed help applying for government support. I was like, dude, I'm literally fine right now. I'm managing. I didn't even know how to react. Part of me was grateful, but another part was screaming. Still, I didn't say much. I figured maybe he just cared too much. Until one night we went to dinner with his old roommate, and that's when everything clicked. The guy was kind of drunk and started joking about Mike having a savior kink. He said it like it was this long-running joke. Apparently, all of Mike's exes had serious health issues. One had a heart condition. Another had some intense chronic fatigue. And one, the roommate said, had just gotten out of an abusive relationship and could barely leave her apartment when they started dating. And every time they got better, Mike got distant. I just sat there staring at my pasta like I was watching my own movie unravel. When I asked Mike about it afterward, he said something about how he just naturally gravitates toward people who need emotional depth, which sounded poetic but made zero sense. He followed it with, "Sometimes people are only themselves when they're vulnerable." I left his place early that night. After that, I started noticing everything. How he always seemed a little disappointed when I had good days. How he offered to do laundry for me even when I said I didn't need help. How he said things like, "I love how real you are when you're struggling." That one made me want to disappear. I decided to do a little internet deep dive. Nothing too invasive, just Googled him and poked around. And that's when I found the weird Reddit post. Some girl had written about a guy who sounded almost exactly like him. Same first name, same city, same pattern. She said he'd encourage her to quit her part-time job to focus on her recovery, then slowly started taking over every part of her schedule: appointments, shopping, budgeting. He applied to be her caregiver for state benefits. When she started improving and getting her independence back, he dipped. I felt sick. Everything clicked. He didn't just like helping, he needed to be needed. And once you weren't fragile enough anymore, he moved on. I didn't even confront him. I just stopped replying. Blocked his number, his socials, everything. He sent a couple emails asking if I was okay, and said he missed supporting me. Not miss me, missed supporting me. That was all I needed to see. I still think about it sometimes. Not because I miss him, hell no, but because I almost believed that was love. That kind of over-the-top attention when you're low, it feels good. But it's not love. It's control dressed up as compassion. Alright, so Olivia and I matched during a weird phase in my life where I had just re-downloaded the apps after swearing them off for like the 5th time. I wasn't even expecting much. Her profile had all these earthy photos, one of her in a sunflower field, one hiking barefoot, which should have been a warning, honestly, and a bio that said something like, "I feel everything deeply and I love hard." At the time, I thought it sounded poetic. Now it sounds like a threat. She messaged me first, which I liked. Said I looked like someone who makes great playlists, which, yeah, I do. Our chat was solid, funny, smart, and a little weird in a way that made it seem like she wasn't taking things too seriously. She told me early on that she studied psychology and was super into emotional awareness or whatever. I figured cool, better than someone who quotes Jordan Peterson and talks about crypto all day. So we set up a first date. She picked this plant-based cafe that only served food in bowls. Like literally, the menu was Earth Bowl, Energy Bowl, Rebirth Bowl. But it was a chill vibe and we talked for like 3 hours. A lot of it was her asking me deep questions, like what my relationship with my dad was like or what role I played in my friend group. At first, it felt like she really wanted to know me. Then it started feeling like she was diagnosing me. Still, I didn't mind too much. She was cute and had this intense stare that made me feel like I was saying something profound, even when I was just talking about my dog's weird food allergies. We made plans for a second date the next weekend. She texted me that morning and asked if we could do brunch instead of dinner. Said she had a conflict that night, which sounded vague, but whatever. I agreed. She sent me the address of a little breakfast spot I'd never heard of, kind of tucked into this quiet neighborhood with zero parking. I got there early and texted her to let her know I grabbed a table. She replied, "Awesome. Be there in 5. Look for me and Barbara." Barbara. I stared at the text for a solid minute trying to figure out if that was a typo. Like maybe it was her friend, a dog, her car's name. I had no clue. But I figured maybe it was a spontaneous group hang situation and I'd just roll with it. A big mistake. Olivia shows up, smiling like nothing's weird, and trailing behind her is this older woman with short gray hair, a pastel scarf, and the most intense glasses I've ever seen. She looked like every TV therapist you've ever seen in one person. They sit down, and Olivia says, "So this is Barbara, my mom/therapist." My brain actually stalled, like it just gave up. I blinked and said, "Oh, cool," even though absolutely nothing about it was cool. I thought it was a bit at first, like some kind of meta test to see how I'd react. But no. They both just sat there, flipping open menus like this was totally normal. Olivia started asking me questions, again with that deep probing style, stuff like what my biggest insecurity in relationships is or what emotional patterns I noticed growing up. I answered a couple because I didn't want to be rude, but then Barbara jumped in. She started giving feedback. Literal feedback. She said things like, "That's a very dismissive response," and "interesting sounds like a fear of intimacy." I'm sitting there sipping black coffee like it's a sedative, trying to figure out how this even qualifies as a date anymore. At one point, I asked Olivia what was going on, and she said she thought it would be cool to have her mom there to get a second opinion and help her avoid falling for people who aren't emotionally safe. I was like, an IN interview, a counseling session, a live podcast. It just got weirder. Barbara pulled out a little notepad and started jotting stuff down. I asked if I was being evaluated, and Olivia said, "It's just so I can remember things better. Takeaways." She said it like we were at a team building retreat, not a pancake restaurant. The kicker, they ordered for me. It straight up asked if I had food preferences, and before I could answer, Barbara said, "He seems like a protein bowl kind of guy," and boom, server was gone. I started scanning the room for cameras at that point, like maybe this was some bizarre YouTube series. But nope, completely real. A family therapy brunch disguised as a second date. It hit me halfway through the meal that Barbara wasn't just Olivia's mom. She really was her therapist. Olivia kept referring to her as Dr. Bloom like we were in a session, and Barbara kept saying stuff like, "I've watched Olivia go through so much heartbreak, and we're trying to build healthier patterns," which made me want to slide under the table and disappear. I finished my coffee and pretended I had somewhere to be. They both thanked me for being so open, and Olivia hugged me like I had just passed an emotional audition. I walked to my car and sat there for like 10 minutes trying to process it. And look, I get it. Some people are super tight with their parents. Some people want to cut through the dating BS. But this was like if your Bumble match showed up with a life coach and a legal pad. I felt like I was in a study, not a relationship. She texted me later that night saying, "Barbara and I both think you have really healthy emotional potential. Would love to see where this could go." I didn't reply. Blocked her the next morning. Still don't know if she brings Barbara to every second date or if I just won some kind of messed up therapy lottery. So Jason and I met through this app my coworker forced me to try. It wasn't one of the big ones, more of a for people who are serious about values type thing. The kind of place where guys wear shirts in their photos and everyone's bio mentions Sunday hikes or being intentional. I was kind of burned out on chaotic dates, so I figured I'd try something different. Jason messaged me with this really confident vibe, like he had his life together in a way that made me feel like I didn't have to do the usual babysitting of someone's barely held together routine. He worked in finance but didn't make a big deal out of it. Said he was into order, structure, and building a partnership, which sounded nice at the time. Like cool, someone who plans ahead and isn't just winging it every day. He was really articulate and kind of intense, but in a charming way. Like he looked you dead in the eye and said things like, "I don't date casually," in the first 5 minutes. Some people might have found it too much, but I thought he was just being upfront. At first, he picked a restaurant for our first date and made a reservation without even asking if I liked Italian. Sent me the details in a calendar invite, which should have been weird, but I was honestly impressed. After months of guys saying, "Wanna chill," and then texting you up. At 1 a.m., it felt refreshing to have someone act like an adult. The place he chose was pretty fancy, not like black tie, but it definitely had candles and a guy in the corner playing sad guitar. I got there a little early and looked through the menu. I was excited to try this gnocchi thing with sage butter because it sounded amazing. He arrived right on time, kissed me on the cheek like we'd been dating for weeks, and sat down already waving at the waiter. Before I could even say anything, he ordered wine for both of us. I don't even really drink red, but okay, whatever, I figured I'd let it go. Then the waiter asked if we were ready to order, and I said I needed a minute to look again, and Jason just kept going, like he ordered for both of us, without checking in. Just told the guy, "She'll add the chicken parm, I'll do the veal." Then handed back the menus like he hadn't just spoken for me like I was a kid on a field trip. I was too stunned to react at first. I kind of laughed awkwardly and said I was actually looking at something else, but he just smiled and said, "Next time. First dates should keep it simple." That's when I started noticing the tone of the charm. Like, he wasn't being considerate, he was controlling. We started talking, and he kept dropping little comments that felt off. Like when I told him I run a small freelance thing on the side, he said, "That's cute, but I hope you're not planning to work once you have kids." Just casually dropped it in like it was a fact, not an opinion. I asked him what he meant, and he leaned in and said, "I think relationships work best when people return to their natural roles. Things get complicated when women try to do too much." You know what I mean? I absolutely did not. But I didn't say much right away because I honestly couldn't tell if he was just socially awkward or genuinely trying to drop some 1950s values on me in the middle of a candlelit dinner. I tried to redirect the convo by talking about movies or something neutral, and he kept swinging it back to this idea of traditional dynamics and retraining the modern woman. Yeah, that's the word he used. Retraining. He said he dated a few women who thought they were independent, but that once they relaxed into structure, they were so much happier. Like dating him was a wellness retreat or some kind of spiritual cleanse. He talked like he had a rule book in his head and just slotted people into it. Men provide, women support. Men lead, women follow. He literally said dating apps had damaged women's instincts and that he was glad I seemed more open-minded. I was halfway through my forcibly chosen chicken parm when I decided I wasn't staying for dessert. I played nice enough to get through the meal, but mentally I was already in an Uber. When the check came, he didn't even glance at it, just handed over his card and said, "I take care of what's mine." I nearly choked on my water. I wasn't his. I was a person sitting across from him, desperately trying to figure out if this was a prank. The second I got outside, I walked the opposite direction from where he was parked and ordered a ride. He texted me that night saying it was refreshing to be with someone who didn't resist masculine leadership. I blocked him before I could throw my phone. I told my friends about it, and they were horrified but also fascinated. Like he was a relic from a different time that somehow slipped into 2025 with a functioning phone and a debit card. Looking back, the signs were all there. The calendar invite. The ordering without asking. The low-key test comments. It wasn't confidence. It was control disguised as manners. He didn't want a girlfriend. He wanted a student. And yeah, I still regret not speaking up more at the table, but in the moment, I was just trying to finish the meal without flipping the table over. I don't date finance guys anymore. Not because they're all like that, but because every time one starts talking about structure, I get flashbacks of chicken parm and retraining speeches. Okay, so this one's gonna sound fake, but I swear it happened exactly like this. I matched with Anna while I was half watching a dumb cooking show where the judges whisper argue about onions. I wasn't even really in the mood to swipe, but her profile came up and she had that calm, artsy vibe that kinda pulls you in without trying too hard. She had this bookstore aesthetic. Like one of her photos was her holding a coffee with a quote about growth in the caption, and she just looked solid, not chaotic. For once. She messaged first, asked about the stupid cactus in my third photo, and we hit it off from there. She asked thoughtful stuff, never too flirty, more like she already knew how to have real conversations. I told my friend she seemed like a grown-up, which is funny now, considering how all this played out. We met for drinks at this spot she picked downtown. Classy but not overdone, one of those cocktail bars that has plants hanging from the ceiling and playlists that sound like they were made by someone's therapist. She walked in and looked even better in person. Clean style, minimal makeup, that whole natural glow thing. She gave me a hug right away and acted like we'd known each other for longer than a week. I liked it. It felt easy. The date was actually going super well, like almost too well. We had that clicky conversation thing going where you both finish each other's stories or make the same dumb joke at the same time. It felt real. She asked about my job, my music taste, my favorite place to go when I'm overwhelmed. I thought maybe she was just really good at dates, or maybe we were actually vibing. It wasn't until she brought up family that things started to turn. She asked if I was close with my parents. I said, yeah, mostly with my dad. Told her he raised me and we still talk every week. That turned into a whole thing about how rare that kind of connection is these days. She seemed really into it, nodding and smiling, like I was describing some beautiful father-son Hallmark movie. She mentioned she used to live in a different part of town and had worked with a nonprofit for a bit. Said she knew some people in education where my dad works. That's when the weird little itch started in my brain, but I didn't fully connect anything. Yet. So she goes to show me a picture of a dog she's thinking about adopting. Scrolls through her phone, and for a second, she scrolls too far. She goes past the dog and stops on this random baby photo. But not just any baby. It was me. Like straight up me. Chubby cheeks, beach towel, red plastic bucket hat that I've seen framed at my dad's house since I was a kid. I recognized it immediately. I didn't say anything at first because my brain was trying to find a reason. Maybe she downloaded it from my Instagram. But that picture's never been posted anywhere. It's not online. It's only in my dad's house. I kind of froze. She didn't notice right away that she'd shown me, but when she saw the look on my face, she just slowly locked her phone and looked at me like, okay, so. I asked her where she got that photo, and she just said it, super calm like she'd been waiting to explain it. She goes, so, I used to date your dad. I swear everything around me went silent like the bar just turned into a vacuum. She kept talking like that sentence wasn't completely insane. Said they dated for a little while about a year ago, nothing serious, and she ended things on good terms. Then she said she recognized me when we matched because she'd seen the baby pictures at his place. Let me say that again. She recognized me. Swiped right anyway. Decided to go on the date. And brought up my family like it was this cute little connection instead of a huge flaming red flag. I just sat there blinking. She kept talking, acting like it was some kind of weird coincidence that maybe could turn into something. Like we were a messed up rom-com or a plot twist from a streaming show that got canceled halfway through the season. She even said something like, "It's kind of wild how connected the universe is, right?" No, Anna. No, it's not magical. It's messed up. I asked her when exactly they stopped dating. She said it was around February. I met her in March, so it wasn't even a long time ago, and she didn't accidentally match with me, she knew. She saw me connected the dots, and still thought it was a good idea to go on a date with the son of the guy she'd recently been involved with. I was speechless. She said something about how she wanted to see who I was for herself, which just made it worse, like it was a case study, like she was evaluating if the kid matched the man. I asked her flat out why she wouldn't just unmatch me the second she recognized me, and she said she didn't want to judge based on assumptions. That's when I stood up. I was done. I told her I was leaving, and she nodded like she expected it, like she had hoped I'd stick around but figured this would probably happen. She didn't even try to chase me down or explain more. She just sat there, sipping her drink like I was the one being dramatic. When I got to my car, I didn't even turn the engine on for 5 minutes. Just sat there staring at my hands like they weren't mine. Then I called my dad. He answered casually, and I told him the whole thing. There was this long silence on his end. And he sighed and said, I didn't think it'd go that far, which told me everything I needed to know. He knew about the match. He didn't warn me. He let it play out like it was nothing. I didn't even know what to say to him after that. I blocked Anna's number that night. Deleted the app. Again. Told my friends, and they all just stared at me like I made the whole thing up. It's not the kind of story you can even tell properly because people think you're exaggerating. But I swear that was my actual baby photo on her phone. And the worst part, she looked at it like it meant something. But whatever, we started talking and he actually seemed grounded. Asked questions that weren't creepy. Didn't say you up. Or call me lady, so I was already ranking him higher than 90% of the app. He told me he was part of a small men's group focused on growth, and I assumed that meant like journaling or meditation, or, I don't know, sharing feelings over firewood or something. He invited me over for dinner for our second date. Said he liked to cook and didn't trust restaurants. Bit of a red flag, but I wasn't in the mood for another $17 salad downtown, so I went with it. He lived in this weirdly spotless apartment. Minimalist decor, like he bought a furniture set labeled Serious Man Starter Pack. Think gray walls, 2 black mugs, and a single plant that looked scared to be there. He was making veggie tacos and had this whole set of ready candles, music that sounded like background noise from a meditation app that works. Seemed a little too curated, but I chalked it up to him wanting to impress me. We ate, we laughed. Everything seemed normal until halfway through when he started talking about feedback. He asked if I'd ever been in a relationship where someone gave me honest feedback on how I present myself. I laughed and said, "You mean like friends roasting me?" And he goes, "No, like breaking down your energy in the moment and what it says about your subconscious patterns." Okay. That's when it started getting weird. He said his men's group has this system. They record their dates and then analyze them in the group. Not video, just audio. They listen back and look for imbalances in energy and submission cues. I was like, "Excuse me." He said, super casually, that our conversation was being recorded. Just dropped it in like he was saying, "By the way, ADC's a little loud." I froze. Asked him what he meant, and he pointed to this tiny black box thing on a shelf by the window. Said it was a mic, and that it was only for his growth. Like that made it less messed up. I stared at him and asked, "So you record every woman you go out with?" And he said, "Only the ones I want to grow from." like it was some kind of spiritual cleanse. Then he explained how his group meets weekly to go over these recordings. They rate the date, not like how much they liked the girl or how good the conversation was, but how much the woman was in her feminine. His words, not mine. He said they focus on posture, vocal tone, whether she interrupts, and how much she resists or yields during the interaction. Apparently, they believe dating is a battlefield of polarity. You're either giving energy or receiving it. You're either a guide or a follower. I literally couldn't make this up if I tried. That you'd have a point system. He said one of the guys brought a 3-hour date to the group once and got rated a 9.2 in polarity alignment because she cried during dessert. I almost threw my taco at him. I asked if he told the women he recorded them. He shrugged and said it was legal in our state. Said it wouldn't work if they knew because it would taint the organic energy. Like this was a wildlife documentary and I was a gazelle being observed in its natural habitat. I was like, dude, this is a date, not a case study. I didn't sign up to be your homework. Then he said the sentence that officially broke my brain. I could tell by the way you walked in that you lean masculine in tension. I said, what the hell does that mean? And he said, you move with forward energy, confident, directed. It's not wrong, but it's an obstacle to harmony. That's when I stood up. I didn't even finish my drink. I grabbed my phone, told him to delete the recording, and walked out. He texted me later saying he appreciated my fiery energy and that it had given him new insights. Then he asked if I wanted to meet the group. Meet the group? Like I was going to sit in a circle of button-down wearing spreadsheet dudes while they played back my voice like it was part of some emotional surveillance mission. No thanks. I didn't even reply. I blocked him so hard my thumb hurt. I told my friend the whole thing and she thought I was joking. Thought I made it up. Until I showed her the website. Yeah, turns out they actually have a site. It's password protected, but the homepage alone is enough to make your spine itch. Black and white photos of intense-looking dudes staring into forests. Quotes about reclaiming masculine essence. One page literally said, women want to be led. Most men have forgotten how. I have never closed a tab so fast in my life. I still think about that stupid recording. Like, was it even here? Me talking about my dog and asking him what kind of cheese he used. Are they all sitting in a living room somewhere, taking notes like, yes, she hesitated before asking about the seasoning. That's resistance. Dating is already weird enough without people secretly recording you and rating your performance like it's a fantasy football draft. I'm not your Dea. I'm not your polarity test. I'm just someone who came over to eat a taco and now needs 3 years of silence. I matched with Megan during that weird part of the year where everything feels kind of fake, late November, when people are either trying to find someone for cuffing season or just bored and cold. Her profile was super normal, which is what got me. No filters, no weird bios about astrology or high standards or must love dogs or don't even try. Just a couple cute pics of her smiling at brunch and one of her holding a drink that looked like it cost $16. Seemed chill. Our messages were totally normal too. She was funny in a quick, off-the-cuff way and didn't ask anything weird. No trauma dumping. No job flexing. Just good conversation. I remember she said she liked guys who don't make everything about themselves, which made me laugh because I had just unmatched a guy who wouldn't shut up about his CrossFit journey. Megan seemed refreshingly low drama. So yeah, I was into it. She suggested dinner. We met at this Korean barbecue spot she liked, and ate there first. She came in wearing this giant coat and immediately complained about how cold it was, which somehow didn't come off as annoying. It was kind of endearing, actually. She sat across from me, unwrapping her scarf like she was taking off armor, and smiled like we were already in the middle of something. That's kind of how it felt. Easy. Familiar. We started eating and everything felt super relaxed. She asked about my job, my dumb hobbies, and whether or not I thought penguins were overrated. I told her I didn't have a strong opinion about penguins, and she said that was suspicious. That kind of vibe. Bantery. Fun. About halfway through dinner, she got quiet for a second, like really quiet. She was chewing and just kind of zoning out, looking over my shoulder. Then she looked back at me and said really calmly, so, I feel like I should probably tell you something. I thought she was going to say she had some weird allergy or that she hated the food but didn't want to be rude. Instead, she goes, I'm still living with my ex, but it's not what you think. I laughed like, okay, and she just sat there staring. I realized she wasn't joking. She went on to explain, in the most casual voice imaginable, that she and her ex had broken up like 4 months ago, but they still shared the apartment because it was rent controlled. And also because, and this is where it went fully off the rails, she was hoping that by dating again, she could make him jealous enough to get back together with her. I actually sat there blinking. For like 10 full seconds, she explained the whole plan like she was reading me a to-do list. Apparently, the idea was that he didn't appreciate her anymore, and she thought if he saw her going out with new people, dressing up again, reclaiming her energy, then maybe he'd realize what he lost. I was part of the act, the performance. And she didn't even seem guilty about it. She said, I mean, I like you, I'm not using you like that. But I am still kind of hoping you'll wake up, you know? She said it like it was just an inconvenient truth, like she was telling me she had a dentist appointment next week and forgot to reschedule. I asked if he knew she was going on dates, and she laughed. Said, oh, and yeah, I make sure he knows. She even told me that before our dinner, she made a big show of getting ready in front of him. Loud music, perfume, the whole thing. Said she left her closet door open so he could see which outfit she chose. She wanted it to sting. I was still trying to figure out how to respond when she added, you're actually the first one I've gone out with twice. He asked about you. I think he's getting suspicious. I don't even know how to explain the feeling I had in that moment. I wasn't mad exactly, just weirded out, like I had stepped into a story I didn't audition for. She'd cast me as the guy who was supposed to make her ex jealous enough to beg for her back. I was a human mirror reflecting what he couldn't be. And the wildest part, she really thought I'd be chill with that. I asked her what would happen if it worked. If her ex did suddenly confess everything and wanted her back. She looked at me and said, then I'd probably stop dating, yeah. No hesitation. No apology. We finished the meal in this weird silence where she just went back to eating like nothing happened. I said I wasn't sure I wanted to be a part of someone's revenge arc, and she said, it's not revenge, it's strategy. Then she told me dead serious that you saw us leave the last date together. She had made sure of it. She said she waved at him from the street. I didn't even see him, but apparently he was watching from their kitchen window. I paid and left. Didn't hug, didn't do any fake polite, we should do this again nonsense. She texted me 2 hours later a screenshot of her ex's passive-aggressive Instagram story with a crying emoji and said, see, it's working. I didn't reply. I just blocked the number and deleted her from my phone. I don't even think she was evil or anything. I honestly think she believed what she was doing made sense. That she was being bold and clever. But it was honestly one of the most messed up situations I've ever walked into. I wasn't a person to her. I was a message. A symbol. A tool to poke her ex in the emotional ribs until he snapped and said something dramatic. And maybe he did. Maybe they got back together. But if they did, it happened without me. I just wanted some dinner. Alright, so Chris started off seeming like one of those overly polished guys, but in a way that kind of works when you've been on the apps too long. His profile looked like it was made by a committee. Professional headshots, a bio that said he loves efficient communication and believes in systems, and a bunch of weird corporate-sounding hobbies like optimizing his morning routine and reading about leadership frameworks. I figured he might be a little intense, but at least he wasn't holding a fish or quoting The Office. We matched, and his first message wasn't even a question. It was a full paragraph, like an essay, outlining what he was looking for, how he approached dating, and what kind of traits he values in a partner candidate. Yeah, he actually used that phrase. I almost unmatched him, but part of me was like, okay, maybe it's kind of funny. At least he's direct. We met at this upscale ramen spot, the kind of place with low lighting and weird jazz playing. I wore something normal, jeans, sweater, boots, while he showed up in a button-up with cufflinks. Like actual cufflinks. For noodles, he looked like he was heading to a business negotiation, not a first date. I joked about it, and he said, I like to dress for outcomes. I should have known right then. So we sit down, we order drinks, and I think maybe the vibe will relax a little. I ask him about work, and he immediately launches into a whole monologue about founder culture and startup ecosystems. He said he does some kind of consulting and investment stuff, but honestly, I couldn't even follow what he was saying. Every sentence felt like it came from a TE talk I didn't ask for. Then, right as the server drops off our drinks, he pulls out a literal binder, like from under his coat, just slides it onto the table like this is a presentation. He opens it, and inside is a series of printed profiles. I can't make this up. They look like resumes, not dating profiles, resumes. Name, age, education, hobbies, strengths, weaknesses. Each one had bullet points and weirdly specific commentary, like strong communication but tends toward emotional overexpression, or ambitious but inconsistent sleep habits. I asked him what it was, and he said it was his partner evaluation archive. He said he's dated over 70 women in the past 2 years and keeps records to help him track patterns. Like, he has categories, scoring systems, red flags highlighted. Apparently, I was profile number 74. He pointed to a blank form that had my name written at the top, like a fresh sheet waiting to be filled in. I started laughing, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. I said, "Wait, you actually take notes on dates?" And he said, completely serious, "Yes. The same way a business tracks performance indicators. Dating is a strategic investment." He asked me to walk him through my personal background. I thought he was joking. I asked what he meant, and he literally said, "I'd like to hear about your educational path, your past relationship outcomes, and any recurring emotional blockers you've noticed." He even had a pen ready. I told him I wasn't comfortable being interviewed like a candidate, and he looked confused, like genuinely confused. He said, "But you applied by matching. This is just the next phase." He wasn't being sarcastic. This was how his brain worked. Then he asked if I had a copy of my resume on my phone. Not for a job, just so we could see how I present myself in professional settings and cross-reference with how I behave socially. At that point, I thought I was being pranked. Looked around for a camera. Nothing. The food came and he didn't touch it. Just started asking me a bunch of questions like, how do you define emotional labor? And would you consider yourself more of a strategic or nurturing partner? I told him I wasn't answering interview questions over soup. He said, "I appreciate your boundaries. That's a good sign." Then, mid-meal, he started filling out the page, like right in front of me. Said stuff like spontaneous humor, possible masking, pushback on evaluation process, may indicate control concerns, and unclear communication preference. No documents submitted. No documents submitted. Like I forgot to attach my cover letter or something. I didn't even finish eating. I asked for the check, and he looked shocked. Told me most people finish the full evaluation. I said I wasn't a quarterly report and left. The next morning, he mailed me a follow-up summary. Not even joking. Subject line said, "Candidate number 74. First impressions and recommendations." It was a PDF with 3 sections: communication style, emotional potential, and logistical compatibility. He gave me a 6.8 overall. Said I showed promise but resisted structured, and might thrive under mentorship. Mentorship. I didn't respond. I didn't block him either. I just watched an unread email sit in my inbox for weeks like some kind of cursed object. My friends printed the PDF and hung it on the fridge as a joke. Last I heard, he's still dating. Still using the binder. Still tracking emotional KPIs like he's running HR for the concept of love. I met Lauren on a Sunday afternoon when I was just trying to kill time before doing actual laundry. Her profile was kind of chaotic, but in a fun way. One photo of her in front of a hot dog stand, one in a wedding dress holding a Nerf gun, and one on a mountain yelling into the sky. I figured she was just funny, maybe a little unhinged in a cool way. Her bio said not here for anything basic, which could go either way, but I was bored and figured why not. We matched, and she immediately messaged me saying she liked my nose, which no one's ever said to me in my life. I laughed and we started chatting. Her messages were kind of intense, but charming. She asked a lot of questions about values and loyalty and whether I believe people could handle radical honesty. Honestly, it felt like a podcast episode in text form, but I was intrigued. She asked if I wanted to grab drinks that same night. I figured she was just impulsive, which, fine, so am I said sure. She picked at this rooftop bar I'd never been to, one of those spots that's just barely fancy enough to make you question your shoes. I show up and she's already there, sitting in a booth with 2 drinks ready. A whiskey sour for me, apparently. She said I looked like someone who didn't mess around with gin. I didn't know what that meant, but I played along. Things started out normal, flirty, kind of deep, but still playful. She asked about my longest relationship, how I handled jealousy, and what I think about monogamy in the modern world. I told her I was open-minded but generally leaned toward one person at a time. She nodded like she was evaluating me and said, "That's actually really helpful. I'm doing a thing right now." A thing? She sipped her drink, leaned in close, and said, "I should probably tell you what's really going on." I thought she was going to say she was moving out of the country or secretly had a lizard farm or something. But no. She goes, in an open marriage. Sort of. It's a unique arrangement. And then she just kept talking like she'd said nothing unusual. I was like, okay, interesting, but why am I here exactly? Then she explained it. Slowly. Apparently, she and her husband run this ongoing experiment. Game? I don't even know what to call it. Basically, they test people by having Lauren go on dates with other men to see if they'll agree to be part of a secret affair. If the guy tries to hide it, lies about it, or crosses certain lines, she fails them. Then she and her husband talk about it together and analyze how men respond to temptation. I asked her, "Wait, so this is like a trust game for you two?" She nodded like I just passed a quiz. Said it was about gathering data on masculine behavior. Then she added, "You're actually doing really well so far." I sat there like, what the hell is happening right now? She said they'd been doing it for over a year, that it's part of their relational growth journey, that she's gone on about 20 dates, and only 2 guys have passed the test. She said one of them is still a close friend of theirs, which felt concerning. I asked if her husband knew she was out with me right now, and she said, "Of course." He dropped me off, but I actually looked over my shoulder like he might be sitting at another table with binoculars and a notebook. She said this wasn't about trapping anyone, just about observing how people behave when they think they're not being watched. I asked her if she always tells people halfway through the date. She said sometimes she waits until after they've kissed or invited her home. So now I'm sitting across from a woman who's essentially running a loyalty simulation on behalf of her husband and smiling like she's doing me a favor by being honest. And she really believed this was a normal, evolved way to be in a relationship. She called it practicing radical transparency. I asked her what would have happened if I tried to hook up with her without asking questions. She said, "Then we'd have a really interesting discussion at home tonight." And then she asked if I wanted to meet her husband sometime. Like, not even in a let's all hang out way. More like I was being invited to the post-game analysis. I didn't even finish my drink. I said I had to go feed my friend's cat. I don't even have a friend with a cat. She walked me to the elevator and said, "Just so you know, you're already ahead of most guys." You asked questions. That matters. I smiled, said thanks, and as soon as I turned the corner, I deleted the app on the spot. The next morning she texted me. He said he liked your vibe. If you're curious, we're open to conversation. I didn't reply. I just sat there wondering how many other dudes are out there right now being unknowingly evaluated like we're in some long-term emotional escape room. Honestly, I'm still not even mad about it. Just confused. Like deeply confused about how many levels of dating games people are willing to invent to feel like they're the enlightened ones. So I met Ethan through a mutual on Instagram, which should have been safer than an app, right? Like, at least there's some kind of social circle in common. My friend swore he was cool, said he was different and deep, which in hindsight, I should have translated to he journals aggressively and thinks it's therapy. He slid into my DMs after replying to a story where I posted my takeout sushi. He said something like, "Sushi with soul." I respect that. I didn't even know what that meant, but we started talking anyway, and it was decent. No red flags at first. He was into writing, said he was working on a book, and had this really chill energy that made you feel like he wasn't trying too hard. We made plans to meet up at this artsy little restaurant that only plays jazz and serves bread in a wooden basket. He picked the spot, said it was one of his favorites and that sharing a meal is sacred. He texted the day before to confirm like 3 times, which I thought was sweet, but I realized now it was probably more about control than care. I showed up and he was already seated, sipping on an espresso like he was a European film character. He stood up to hug me, then immediately pulled out my chair for me like we were in a period drama. I'm not used to guys doing that, so I smiled and said thanks, and he just nodded like he passed some internal etiquette test. The conversation started off fine. We talked about weird childhood hobbies, favorite albums, some travel stuff. He was clearly smart, but there was this edge. Like he wasn't trying to connect as much as he was trying to steer everything toward a theme. Like every story he told circled back to this thing about how people expect too much from others, and no one wants to just exist without needing anything. I asked him what he meant, and he launched into this long, slightly ranty explanation about entitlement. How people are always taking without realizing it. How relationships now are just exchanges disguised as emotions. I kind of nodded along like, okay, sure, thinking maybe he was just one of those overthinkers who needs to talk in paragraphs. Then I asked what his book was about, and that's when it all snapped into place. He said he was writing about how modern dating is a mirror of societal dysfunction. Cool, I thought. Then he added, the core of the book is built around controlled experiments. I was like, what kind of experiments? He smiled, took a sip of his drink, and said, you're actually part of one right now. I blinked, thought he was joking, asked him what he meant. He leaned forward like he was letting me in on a secret and said, I set up situations to observe how people behave when things don't go according to their expectations, specifically around roles, money, and reciprocity. I still thought maybe he was just talking about general stuff. But no, he meant the actual date. This date, right now, was part of it. Then he says, so at the end of tonight, I'm going to leave you with a check, and I want to see how you react. You can be angry, confused, understanding. It's all data. I stared at him, just stared. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't joking. He actually thought this was a reasonable thing to tell someone halfway through dinner. He said he's done it several times and people respond in predictable but disappointing ways. That women especially tend to assume men should pay and get offended when he disrupts the script. I asked him why he doesn't just go Dutch like a normal person, and he said, because that doesn't create tension. Tension reveals character. I literally said, you're running social experiments on dates. And he goes, I'm studying emotional entitlement. If people understood what they bring to the table, they'd stop being shocked when the bill hits the table. At this point, I couldn't even process it. I looked down at my plate, then back at him and said, so you planned this from the start. And he just nodded like this was a proud moment. Then he added, you're actually reacting better than most. Some people cry. One girl stormed out and threw a fork. He was proud of this, like really proud. Said he's got an entire chapter on what he calls financial confrontation responses. He said it probably lands somewhere between passive acceptance and soft disappointment. I told him I didn't sign up to be in his book, and he said, you agreed to a date. The rest is context. I don't think I've ever been more tempted to throw a drink in someone's face, but honestly, I didn't want to give him material. So when the check came, he just sat there, arms folded, like a professor waiting for a reaction. I didn't say a word. I pulled out my card, paid, and stood up. He looked a little annoyed, actually, like I hadn't given him enough content. As I grabbed my coat, I said, you should at least offer people a pseudonym when you use them. And he said, I do, but I won't need one for you. You didn't make the final chapter. Cool. I walked out and never looked back. Blocked in the second I got home. Texted the mutual friend who introduced us and told her to never recommend anyone to me again. She was just as horrified as I was. 2 weeks later, I got a DM from a random account with no profile photo. Just one message, still gathering data. Let me know if you want to read the chapter. I didn't reply, but I still wonder how many people he's done this to. How many nights he sat there, watching someone try to enjoy a meal, knowing the whole time he was about to turn it into a weird test. Dating is not your lab, Ethan. You're not a scientist. You're just an emotionally unavailable guy in a button-down with too much time and a Google Doc full of delusions. This one felt like it was going okay for about 20 minutes, and then it just wasn't. So I met Brooke on a Wednesday night when I was definitely not supposed to be on dating apps. I had a ton of work to do, hadn't showered, sitting in a hoodie that may or may not have been clean, just swiping out of habit. Her profile was wild, one photo of her in a white dress holding a bouquet. I figured it was a bridesmaid thing. Another of her eating spaghetti aggressively, and one where she was pointing at a for lease sign while laughing. Her bio said, marry me or get out of the way, which I thought was a joke. Spoiler, it wasn't. She messaged me first and said, you look like you wouldn't ruin my credit score. I should have known from that alone, but I played along. She was really funny. Fast replies, kind of intense, but in a bold, chaotic, good kind of way. She asked if I wanted to meet up that weekend. I said sure, and she picked the place. Some retro diner that serves milkshakes in metal cups and has many jukeboxes on the tables. Seemed like a fun vibe. She told me to dress nice but not wedding nice, which again I thought was a joke. She sent like 5 emojis after it. I just assumed she had that sarcastic, over-the-top personality. She seemed like the kind of person who says, I'm crazy, and it's mostly just about eating dessert for dinner. So I get to the diner. I'm 5 minutes early. I sit in the booth and wait, and then I see her walk in. In a wedding dress. Not joking. Not some funny white sundress that happens to look a little bridal. A literal, full-length, white wedding gown. With tulle, lace, veil included, tucked into a messy bun like it was Casual Friday in a bridal catalog. I blinked so hard I almost gave myself a migraine. She walks over, sits down across from me like nothing is weird, and says, I figured we'd skip the fake stages. The waitress came by, and neither of us said anything about the outfit. I think we both just collectively decided not to acknowledge it, and the waitress definitely thought we were filming something for TikTok. Brooke ordered a milkshake and asked if they could put a cherry on it for symbolism. I asked her what was going on, and she said, I wanted to make sure you weren't afraid of commitment, like it was a cute prank or one of those social experiments that ends with people hugging in a park. Then she started talking about her lease. Out of nowhere, like mid-sip of her milkshake, she just casually says, so my lease is up next week, and I was thinking, depending on how tonight goes, it could be convenient. I asked her what she meant. She shrugged and said, well, either we really hit it off and I move in, or we don't and I figure something else out. I'm adaptable. I choked on my water. I thought maybe she was joking, but she pulled out her phone and showed me her Zillow tabs. Said her roommate moved out unexpectedly, and she didn't want to deal with the stress of a solo move if she didn't have to. So she figured she'd manifest stability by dressing for the life she wanted. Manifest stability. That's how she described showing up to a first date dressed like she was about to walk down the aisle and bringing out cohabitation before we even ordered food. Then she said, you don't have to say yes tonight, but if we click, I'm not against a soft move-in, like toothbrush and coffee mug level. Baby steps. I was speechless. I literally had nothing. I don't even remember what I said. Something about being in a busy season at work and not being able to commit to anything major. She nodded and said, I figured you might resist at first. Most guys panic when they're offered something real, which felt like she had that line ready in her notes app. We ate in this weird bubble of tension. She kept looking at her phone and taking random photos of the milkshake, then said she was tracking the energy for her alignment journal. I still don't know what that meant. Then she asked me what side of the bed I sleep on. I told her I didn't think that was relevant, and she said, it will be eventually. By the end of the meal, I was fully checked out. I paid the bill just to escape faster and said I had to get out early for something. Anything. She asked if I wanted to come see her apartment just to feel out the vibe, and I said no thanks. Then she asked, dead serious, if this works out, would you be open to a wedding under $10K, or are you more of a go big or go home guy? Like it was just a logical next step in the night. I said something like, let's just see how things go, and walked out of there so fast I almost left my jacket. She texted me the next morning a photo of herself in the wedding dress again, this time holding a cup of coffee on her couch with the caption, Manifesting continues. I didn't respond. I just muted her number and prayed she wasn't scouting my address on Google Maps. Every once in a while I still check her socials just to see if she actually moved in with someone. I wouldn't be surprised. She had the conviction of someone who could crash a first date, walk out with a key, and convince you it was your idea. Kyle and I matched on a random Tuesday night while I was stuck in line at the pharmacy. He had that kind of face where you can't tell if he's a model or just really good at lighting. His photos were all outdoorsy. One rock climbing, one kayaking, one standing next to a tent looking way too clean to have actually camped. His bio was super short, good listener. Better cook, ask me anything. I messaged first because I was bored, and he responded like 2 seconds later. Our conversation was actually decent. He was sarcastic but not mean, flirty but not gross. He had that confident energy like he didn't need to prove anything, which at the time felt like a relief. And yeah, I noticed his profile mentioned he was partially disabled. Said he had mobility challenges and worked remotely. It didn't really matter to me. I've dated people with all kinds of things going on, mental health, physical stuff, whatever. If you're cool, you're cool. We talked for about a week before meeting up. He picked a cute little bar with a patio, and I offered to meet him out front so I could help if needed. He was like, no worries, I'm good, which I thought meant he didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Again, chill. So I get there and he's already sitting at a table, legs crossed, sipping a drink like he's been waiting for hours, even though I was exactly on time. I walked up and said, hey, and right away he stands up, like, quickly. No cane, no brace, nothing. I didn't say anything, but my brain kind of tilted a little. We sat down and started talking, and he was charming, no lie. Funny, smart, really good at those smooth, quiet compliments that don't sound rehearsed. He asked great questions and made it feel like he was actually listening, not just waiting to talk. But the whole time I kept wondering about the mobility thing. Like maybe he had a condition that wasn't visible or it flared up sometimes. I wasn't going to ask right away, but it was definitely in the back of my head. Then halfway through the second drink, he just casually drops it. He goes, by the way, just so you know, I'm not actually disabled. I paused. Thought I misheard him. He repeated it like it was nothing. I put that on my profile to weed out the shallow ones. I actually blinked at him for like 5 seconds straight. He kept going like he just told me he doesn't like olives. Said he's experimenting with authenticity filters. His whole theory was that by saying he had a disability, he'd only match with women who were compassionate and open-minded. He said it helped him avoid surface-level girls who swipe based on abs. I asked him why he didn't just, I don't know, not be a liar, and he laughed. Like really laughed. Said, you'd be surprised how fast people show their true colors when they think they're talking to someone below their standards. Below their standards. That's the phrase that stuck. He acted like this was some clever little social test, like it was some genius dating strategy instead of just deception. Said he's been doing it for a few months, and it's worked really well. He even admitted he had a second profile, one without the fake info, and he used it to compare how people react to the exact same photos and bio, just without the disability mention. I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. I asked him if he thought it was disrespectful to people who actually deal with that stuff. He said, I'm not mocking it. I'm leveraging it, as if that made it okay. He said most people don't have the guts to be real, and he was just flipping the script to see who's capable of empathy. But it wasn't empathy he was looking for. He wanted praise for being misunderstood. He wanted women who'd give him the benefit of the doubt before he'd even earned it. I told him it was manipulative, and he said, it's only manipulative if I'm not honest eventually, like that somehow fixed everything. Then he asked me, if I had said I made 6 figures instead of being disabled, would that be worse? I said yes. He rolled his eyes and said, that's just social conditioning. Everyone lies on these apps. I told him lying about something people actually struggle with isn't the same as fudging your height by an inch. And then he had the nerve to say, I knew you passed the test. You're obviously not shallow. I didn't feel flattered. I felt like I'd been tricked into auditioning for a role I didn't know existed. Like he'd set a trap just to see if I'd walk into it. And when I did, he called it compatibility. I paid for my own drink and told him I was heading out. He tried to walk me to my car and I said I was good. He shrugged and said, you're probably going to block me now, right? I said yeah, and I did. He texted me later that night a long paragraph about nuance and reverse bias, and some garbage about how everyone's disabled in some way. I just made it literal. I didn't even finish reading it. I just blocked the number. I told my friends, and one of them joked that I had dated a walking ethics question. And honestly, yeah, that's what it felt like. Like I was stuck in a moral philosophy class disguised as a happy hour. Haven't touched a dating app since. Every time I see a vague health-related sentence in a bio, I just swipe left. Not because I care about someone having a condition, but because now I don't know if it's real or just part of someone's messed up trust filter. Tina and I matched on a Saturday night when I was laying on the floor trying to avoid my own to-do list. Her profile was definitely eye-catching, not because she was showing off, but because every single photo looked like a scene from a family movie. Backyard barbecue, fireworks, birthday cake. One of the pics even had her surrounded by like 8 older relatives, all beaming like she just got engaged. I assumed they were just tight-knit or she was close with her fam, which honestly didn't seem like a bad thing. She had this very confident energy in her messages. Like she messaged me first and just said, "I like your face. You down for dinner?" That's it. No weird icebreaker, just vibes. I respected it. We decided to meet up on Monday for a quick bite at a Mexican spot near my place. Nothing fancy, just tacos and horchata and outdoor seating. I got there early. She showed up 5 minutes late in a floral dress and greeted me like we'd known each other since kindergarten. Super friendly, super chatty, and honestly, she looked even better in person. I thought, cool, maybe this one's normal. We ordered food, start talking, and things are flowing great. She's funny, loud in a fun way, and had this energy that filled the whole space. I thought, okay, this could actually be something. We talked about music, growing up in weird households, annoying exes, all the usual first date topics. Then she hits me with, "Can I ask you something kind of random?" I say, "Sure." She goes, "How did your family feel about interracial relationships?" I was like, huh. Caught me a little off guard, but I just answered honestly. Told her my family's pretty chill, not super traditional or judgmental. She nods and says, "That's really good to hear." Then sits her drink and moves on like it was a weather question. I figured maybe she'd had some bad experiences in the past. Still didn't seem like a huge deal. But then she keeps circling back to race stuff, like little comments, not aggressive or anything, but pointed. She asked me about cultural holidays, food my family eats, if I've ever dated outside my background before. I was kind of confused by how deep she was going, but I just answered stuff as it came up. Then she tells me about her family, specifically her parents. She said they're super conservative, very traditional, and still adjusting to the idea of dating outside the gene pool. Her words. I asked her how she deals with that, and she goes, "Oh, I don't." I challenge it head on. Okay, I thought bold. But then she adds, "That's why I only date guys who will get a reaction. You're perfect for this." I literally dropped my taco. I said, "Perfect for what?" And she says, "We're having a family barbecue this weekend. You should come." Just casually, like she was inviting me to a group project. I blinked at her and asked if she was serious. She said 100%. I asked why she wanted me there. She smiled and said, "Because you're exactly the type to make my uncle squirm." I just stared at her. She kept talking like this was a completely normal thing to ask on a first date. Said she's been doing this for a couple of years, bringing home guys who challenge her family's expectations. Black guys, Asian guys, anyone they wouldn't approve of. Said it was her small form of rebellion, like a political statement she could make with a plus one. And I wasn't even mad yet, just shocked, like I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that someone could look at me and think, "You'll piss off my grandpa. You'll do." I asked if she even liked any of the guys she brought home, and she kind of laughed and said, "Sometimes, yeah, but mostly it's about setting the tone. It's like exposure therapy for them." Then she said her cousin brought home a girl with green hair once, and now she can't stop being compared to her. I gotta stay on top. I asked her if she thought maybe this wasn't fair to the people she dates. She tilted her head and said, "I mean, I'm honest eventually." Eventually. So basically, I was being scouted. Not for a relationship, not even for a hookup. I was being cast in a starring role at a racist relative roast dinner. I asked her straight up, "If your parents were super accepting, would we even be on this date?" She didn't answer for a second. Then she said, "Probably not. But that's on them, not you." That's when I stood up. She didn't stop me. Just said, "You're actually handling this really maturely." I like that. Like I was passing some kind of test. On the walk out, she texted me. Offer still stands for Saturday. Free food, emotional chaos. Let me know. I blocked her without replying. Later, I told my friend, and she just kept saying, "You got diversity tokened." And yeah, that's exactly what it was. I was never a person to her. I was a conversation starter, a shock value appetizer, a middle finger with a pulse. Next time someone asks me how I feel about interracial dating on a first date, I'm writing, I met Ben during this random burst of optimism where I told myself I was going to date with intention, like some annoying influencer told me to on TikTok. His profile was sleek, definitely curated. One photo in a co-working space, one on a hiking trail, one where he was wearing a hoodie that said Founder Energy. I rolled my eyes but swiped anyway. He messaged me with, "I like your vibe. Let's build something together," which I assumed was just his way of saying, "Wanna get drinks?" Nope. We chatted for a few days, and he seemed like a pretty normal tech guy, kind of nerdy, kind of intense. He used words like scaling and systems a lot, even when we were talking about super basic stuff. Like I'd say I was making pasta, and he'd reply, "Smart workflow." But he wasn't boring. He had this excitement about him, like he was always on the verge of some big idea. It was kind of charming, honestly. He suggested coffee for our first date, which turned into dinner, which turned into a second date almost right away. We had chemistry, no awkward silences. He listened, laughed at my dumb jokes, and didn't make me feel like I had to be impressive every second. I thought, cool, finally someone who's emotionally available and smart. After our third date, he invited me to help him test something out. He framed it like it was fun, said he was working on a new app and needed a creative partner to bounce ideas off of. I wasn't doing much that weekend, so I figured, why not? Sounded casual. We met at his place, and he had this whole whiteboard set up with flowcharts, sticky notes, a half-eaten protein bar stuck to the table. It looked like the inside of a startup's brain. He said it was a wellness app, but not in the cheesy self-care way. More like a productivity meets mindfulness hybrid that helps optimize your daily rhythm. Again, eye roll worthy, but I kept listening. I asked if I was just brainstorming with him, and he said, kind of. But also, I think you'd be really good at writing copy. Your texts are super engaging. Flattered? Yeah, kind of. Red flag. I see it now. We spent the whole day working on ideas. I helped him write up some taglines. He gave input on color schemes, even mocked up a fake welcome message for the onboarding process. It was weirdly fun. Felt like a project with someone who actually wanted my opinion. At the end, he said, "You're amazing. I've never vibed with someone creatively like this." The next time we hung out, it was more of the same. He said he had a demo deck to prepare for potential investors and asked if I could help him with the language. I was like, wait, is this real now? And he said, yeah, but don't worry, I'll take care of all legal stuff. I just trust your instincts. That's when it started feeling off. Because at this point, we'd been on maybe 5 dates, and suddenly I was helping him build a company. I asked him what my role was supposed to be, and he laughed, said, "You're like my muse/CCO." I didn't even know what CCO meant, but he looked serious. I asked if I was going to be paid or get equity, and he said, "Let's feel it out. I don't like to make things transactional too soon." That line stuck with me. I didn't want to make a scene, so I just slowly started stepping back. But the texts kept coming. He'd send new drafts, links, asked me to just look over this real quick. I stopped replying right away, and suddenly he got weird. Like passive-aggressive weird. He sent me a long message about how some people say they want to build something real but run at the first sign of commitment. Said I had founder fear. I didn't even know what that was supposed to mean. I told him I wasn't comfortable doing free work for a startup I wasn't actually part of. And he said, "But you are part of it. You were there from day one." I asked him if he had any other people on his team, and he said, "Just you. For now. Until it scales." That's when I realized I wasn't dating him. I was unpaid labor with emotional perks. He was literally running a company from his apartment and sourcing free help from women he met online. I found out later that he had done the same thing to another girl. A friend of a friend, actually. Same thing. Met her, dated her for a few weeks, got her to help him with logo ideas and social media strategy, then coasted her when she asked for credit. The wildest part, he probably thought it was a compliment, like he saw us as talented, capable people and wanted us involved. He didn't understand the line between admiration and exploitation. I never blocked him, just muted him. Every once in a while, he still sends me random links to productivity articles like we're still brainstorming. I don't respond. I checked the app site a month later out of curiosity. A copy. Still mine. Word for word. He's probably still out there swiping like a regular dude, meanwhile building a whole startup portfolio off first dates and text chemistry. So now when a guy says, "I'm building something I run," because chances are he wants you to build it too, and not just emotionally. Lily and I matched on a Tuesday while I was eating leftovers on the couch in my hoodie that probably needed to be washed a day ago. Her profile was sharp. Every photo looked like it came from a magazine shoot. Soft lighting, fall leaves, candles, sweaters, boots. Like girl who hosts vision board parties vibes. but she didn't come off fake. She smiled in every pic like she knew something you didn't. Her bio just said, figuring things out, but I love deeply. I should have seen it as a warning, but it read poetic in the moment. She messaged me first, said something like, "You look like you give good hugs," which is exactly the kind of message that cuts through the noise of every hey and wide. We clicked quick. Her texts had this confident, soft energy. She'd ask questions, reply fast, and somehow never made small talk feel boring. After like 3 days, I found myself looking forward to her notifications, which for me is not normal. Usually I lose interest by day 2. We met for drinks at this cozy little bar with string lights and mismatched chairs and menu items that all had names like The Quiet Storm or Lavender Brews. She showed up in a cream sweater and high-waisted jeans and looked like a Pinterest board in the best way. She gave me a hug and smelled like citrus and something floral. No idea what it was, but it worked. We sat down, ordered cocktails, and the conversation just flowed. She was one of those people who could talk about anything. We went from movies to weird dreams to the concept of reincarnation, all in the first 40 minutes. I remember thinking, okay, wow, this is going too well. We went out again that weekend for Rin, and it was just as good. I told her about my childhood obsession with dinosaurs, and she said she used to cry when she saw skeletons at museums because it made her think about time and death. That's the kind of weird compatibility I lied for. Third date was so she. That night sticks in my brain like a weird movie scene that doesn't belong in the rest of the plot. We sit down, order food. Everything feels normal. She's a little quieter than usual, which I figured was just the midweek slump or whatever. I ask how her day's been, and she hesitates for a second before saying, "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." I laugh nervously and say, "Okay, yeah, it's never scary." And she just goes, "I'm engaged." I thought she was joking, like I laugh out loud. But she didn't laugh. She just took a sip of her drink and nodded like she was confirming something. I asked her what she meant, and she said, "I'm supposed to be getting married in a few months, but I'm not 100% sure it's the right thing, so I'm keeping my options open until the wedding." I blinked. Actually blinked hard like maybe I heard it wrong. She told me she met her fiancé during the pandemic. They were friends first, got close, trauma bonded, fell into a routine. He proposed during some weekend cabin trip, and she said yes because everything felt safe. But then she said that lately it's been feeling off. She said, "You ever say yes to something and then wake up one day like, wait, do I even want this?" I said, "Sure, but usually that's about gym memberships, not marriages." She laughed like I was being cute, but I was just stunned. Then she said something that honestly made my stomach turn. She said, "I wanted to see if I still had options. Like, if I met someone and felt something real that would tell me everything right." I just stared at her. She was telling me, straight-faced, that this wasn't casual. She wasn't just bored. She was actively hunting for a reason to leave her fiancé. And if I had given her butterflies or whatever, maybe she'd have dropped him. But I guess I didn't. Or I didn't give enough. Then she goes, "Don't worry. I'm not gonna dump him because of you. I just needed the reminder that I had a choice." And that's when I realized this whole thing. The messages, the compliments, the long talks. I was a measuring stick, not a person. Just someone she lined up next to her almost husband to see which one looked more like love. I asked her if he knew she was doing this, and she just gave me this look like, "Are you serious?" She said, "Of course not. That would ruin the experiment." The experiment. She called it an experiment. She said she only had like 3 or 4 weeks left before she committed fully, and this window was her last chance to explore clarity. I was so shy I didn't even eat. I just sat there nodding like a robot while she talked about how she wasn't even sure she liked the venue her fiancé chose and how it would have been different if she met someone like me first. I paid the bill just to get out of there. Didn't even say goodbye properly. She texted me the next day and said, "I hope you don't hate me." "I think you're great. I just needed to know for myself." I didn't respond. About 3 weeks later, she posted engagement photos. Big field, sunset, white dress. Hashtags like hashtag found Theon and hashtag blessed. No trace of the weird sushi night. No mention of exploring options. Just smiles and soft lighting. Sometimes I wonder what she would have done if I'd leaned in harder, been a little more charming. Kissed her first. Would she have left him? Would I have been a new chapter or just another test she ran? All I know is that I've never been so aware of how replaceable someone can make you feel. So Jake and I met through this app I only downloaded because my best friend bet me $20 I wouldn't last a week without deleting it. His profile didn't scream weirdo at all. If anything, he looked boring in a stable way. You know? Like someone who owns a NutriBullet and actually uses it. His bio was something like, looking for a best friend and a partner. I love lists and long drives. Which sounds kind of sweet until you realize he meant it way more literally than I ever could have guessed. We'd messaged for a few days, and I remember thinking he was refreshingly normal. No weird jokes. No wide texts at 2 a.m. He spelled everything out like a guy who actually proofreads his messages before hitting send. The conversation wasn't wildly exciting or anything, but it had this calm energy that made me feel like maybe I wouldn't end up with another guy who ghosted me after 3 good dates and 1 decent kiss. Our first meetup was at this coffee shop near his place. He picked it and even offered to pre-order our drinks if I told him what I liked. I thought it was considerate. When I got there, he was already sitting, coffee ready, and stood up to say hi like we were on some job interview. He was well dressed in that I plan my outfits on a Pinterest board kind of way. Button up, perfect jeans, clean sneakers, like he Googled what to wear on a first date, and stuck the landing. The date itself, decent. We talked about work, weekend plans, music. He was polite, focused, and really big on asking me how I structure my time. I thought maybe he was just into time management stuff. No big deal. Some people are. I figured he was just a planner type. I even said I like people who could organize things because I hate choosing restaurants. He lit up like I had just handed him a free spreadsheet. Date number 2 came quick. He invited me to dinner at a Thai place, said he'd already made a reservation, and blocked out a 2-hour window. Again, thought it was just him being on top of things. We ate, talked about childhood stuff, and at one point he asked if I'd be down for something a little structured if things went well between us. I thought he meant like exclusivity or weekly date nights. I said, sure, structure is nice. He said, that's good. Most people resist it because they think it's controlling, but I see it as efficient. I laughed because I thought he was kidding. He was not. After that date, he sent me a Google Calendar invite. Not for our next date, for a shared calendar, with both our names. I thought it was some kind of mistake at first. But no, he had made a fully mapped out calendar for us. Stuff like Monday, check and call, 15 mins. Thursday, shared dinner / unwind night. Sunday, walk and reflect, weather permitting. I was like, okay, ambitious, but maybe this is just how he processes connection. I tried to give the benefit of the doubt. I didn't accept the invite. I texted in something like, hey, that calendar's pretty intense, haha. And he said, relationships deserve clarity. Then came the email. Yeah, an actual email. Subject line, relationship duty chart, draft 1. I wish I was joking. I opened it, and there was a full Google Doc with headers, bullet points, and color-coded sections. It looked like a company onboarding manual. Under daily responsibilities, he had suggested roles. Morning texts. Jake, weekly meal plan. Me. Laundry reminder system. Shared. Pet responsibilities. TD. If applicable, he also had a section for conflict protocol that included steps like identify trigger without assigning blame. Pause for mutual breathing. Resume conversation with bullet-pointed concerns. Bullet-pointed concerns. I was still trying to process it when he followed up with a text that said, let me know what parts of the chart you'd like to edit. I'm open to revisions as long as the integrity of the system stays intact. I just stared at my phone for like 5 minutes. No part of me knew how to respond. I didn't even know if I should be freaked out or impressed. This man had planned out an entire pretend relationship after 2 dates and was now inviting me to plug myself into the machine like a Sims character. I asked him if he always does this, and he said, not always. Only when the connection has measurable potential. Measurable. Like he was trying to calculate love in a spreadsheet. I told him I was looking for something a little more organic. He said, structure creates space for organic things to thrive. He actually believed that. I could tell. He really thought this was romantic. That if you just assign enough roles and stick to the system, the emotions would follow. The next day, he sent a calendar invite for emotional check-in, tentative. I declined. He emailed again and said he respected my choice, but would archive our interaction for reflection purposes. That's the last I heard from him. I still have the duty charts saved. Sometimes I open it and I feel like dating is too chaotic, just to remind myself that it could be worse. I could be scheduling my feelings and splitting laundry rotations with a guy I've seen twice. I matched with Sophia on a Sunday night during a wave of random boredom and mild self-loathing. You know the feeling? You can eating cereal out of a mug for dinner 3 nights in a row, scrolling through people's beach vacations like it doesn't hurt. Her profile was cute, lots of photos with her kid, but tastefully done. One of them was just their hands at a farmer's market. Another was her pushing a stroller with some soft quote underneath about growth. Her vibe was earthy and kind, like the type of person who brings you soup when you're sick and remembers your favorite mug. We messaged for a few days, and she was actually really cool. Down to earth, funny, didn't overshare, but also didn't keep it surface level. She told me pretty early on that she was a mom and didn't want to waste time. I respected that. She didn't act like her kid was a burden or a red flag to wave away, just something real that came with her life. I wasn't scared of that. Honestly, it was refreshing to talk to someone who didn't act like they lived in a constant episode of a dating show. We set a plan to grab coffee at this park cafe. She said it was her favorite spot because it had a playground nearby so her kid could hang out if he came along. I figured she was just mentioning it, not like bringing him. But when I got there, she waved me over, and yeah, her kid was definitely with her. Little guy, maybe 5, super cute, eating some goldfish crackers and completely ignoring the world around him. She introduced him like it was normal. No warning. Just, this is Milo. He's chill. So now I'm standing there being introduced to a child on what I thought was a casual date. I didn't panic, but I was definitely thrown. She said she couldn't get a sitter and didn't want to cancel. Again, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Stuff happens. We ordered drinks, sat down at a table in the shade, and I just rolled with it. For the first 10 minutes, it was weirdly okay. The kid was doing his own thing, and Sophie was talking to me like any normal person on a date would. Asking about my weekend, telling me about hers, cracking jokes. I kept trying to figure out if this was a test or just her multitasking mom life. Then she pulled out her phone. At first, I thought she was checking a text, but then she turned it sideways and hit record. Not like a secret move, like fully openly recording. I asked what she was doing as she goes, "Oh, I'd just like to capture moments like this. He's been asking when I'll start dating again, and I want to show him that I'm trying." That sentence didn't fully hit me until a minute later. She wasn't just recording for memories, she was recording me. On our first date, with her kid. For documentation. Then it got worse. She said she was building a little portfolio for her custody lawyer. Her exact words, "A portfolio." I said, "Wait, like to show you're ready to date?" And she nodded and said, "Yeah." And that I'm creating a stable social life. Judges like that. It shows you're rebuilding structure. I asked if she told her lawyer about me, and she said, "Not you specifically, no. But you're part of the evidence." Evidence. She said it so casually, like she was talking about adding vitamins to her morning smoothie. No big deal. Just using our first date to prove she's emotionally ready and socially responsible. I was sitting there like, what is this? A parenthood-themed documentary. She even panned the camera around to the playground and said, "This is the kind of life I want to show him I can offer." I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to be understanding, like, yeah, custody stuff is serious and maybe this is just her way of showing she's got it together. But another part of me was like, wait, why am I in this? Why am I sitting here being passively filmed for a legal proceeding I didn't sign up for? I told her I wasn't super comfortable being recorded, and she smiled and said, "But don't worry, it's just for internal use." Internal USC, like having an HR file. She then tried to pivot back into casual conversation like we didn't just have that moment. Asked me what kind of music I like and if I ever want to go to a street fair. Meanwhile, I'm still stuck on the fact that I'm basically a prop in her custody scrapbook. After about 10 more minutes of trying to pretend it was normal, I said I had to go. She didn't seem offended, just kind of nodded and said, "Totally get it. Thanks for being part of my progress." My progress. I walked away and actually laughed out loud because I didn't know what else to do. It felt like I'd accidentally walked into a mom blogger's behind-the-scenes reel. She texted me later that day and said, "Hey, if it didn't feel like a match, no worries. But if you're ever open to co-parenting energy, you've got great vibes." I didn't answer. She posted a story the next day of her and Milo at the park captioned, "Rebuilding piece by piece." No sight of me, thankfully. but I bet I'm in some folder somewhere labeled Healthy Adult Male Interaction. Nick and I matched right after I'd sworn off dating apps for the 5th time. That Wednesday evening when you're 10 glasses of wine into a Netflix existential spiral and kinda desperate for distraction. His profile caught my eye because it was normal, low-key. A few pics of him hiking and cooking, nothing flashy. But the bio was what sold me. Old-fashioned guy who believes in traditional values and clear agreements. In hindsight, maybe that was code for I want to put our stuff in a contract, but in the moment, it felt refreshing. He messaged first, asking about my favorite song right now, not my favorite selfie or worst pickup line. I actually had to think. Then he built off that and asked about my concert memories and live music adventures. Texting with him felt alive. He wasn't poetic or weird, just good conversation. We decided on dinner that Saturday at this tapas place downtown with dim lighting and random ottomans scattered around. I told my friends about him like I met someone interesting again, and then he teased me for being optimistic, but whatever. The date started strong. He showed up right on time, smelled nice like sandalwood and coffee, and he greeted me with a sincere smile and this solid, "Hey, you look great." No weird games, no lingering hugs, just polite. He pulled out my chair, I laughed, and he said, "My grandma taught me that." That was his first old school moment, and I thought it was endearing. Maybe I'd met someone with manners, I thought. We ordered food, and he steered the convo toward his work as a financial advisor. He wasn't trying to flex, just explaining how he helped people plan their futures. When he asked about mine, I got honest and said I freelance and like unpredictability sometimes. He nodded and said something thoughtful like, "Risk is part of growth," which felt sincere. Then dinner turned weird. Out of nowhere, he said, "I've been thinking. I want to lay out an agreement. Something clear about how we handle money and decisions if this gets serious. No blush, no lay-up. Just flat, I want an agreement." I laughed because I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He pulled out a folder from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. Inside were pages and pages of bullet points, numbered sections, definitions, spaces for signatures. It looked like a prenuptial agreement, but way earlier than that. He started explaining clauses, like 1. If we move in together, we split groceries and utilities 50-50 unless one of us declares financial hardship. 2. Any shared purchases over $500 get a written sign-off. 3. If one of us wants to use the other's credit score for a loan, it requires 3 months' notice and consent. 4. If either of us takes a vacation longer than a week, we send an itinerary and check in every other day. And my favorite line, I want to protect both of our assets and ensure we're making decisions together. He wasn't being rude. He sounded calm and reasonable, like he actually believed this was straightforward. Like I wouldn't react by blinking and trying to figure out if I was being punked. I was stunned. I asked, "Are you joking?" And he looked at me like I'd asked if water is wet. He said, "Not at all. I want us to be fair and on the same page from the start." He paused and asked if I'd like to take it home and look it over. "Take it home?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah. I think for anything serious, clarity is kindness." I didn't take it home. I shoved it back in the folder and told him I wasn't looking to sign a dating contract this early. He studied me for a second, then told the waiter we were done. He paid, nothing crazy, and said it was nice meeting me. I walked out and didn't text him again. Blocked him when I got home. But he didn't stop there. A week later, I got a letter. Yep, a real letter in a real envelope, with the same agreement inside, along with a note that said, "Take your time. No pressure. I'm just looking for someone who wants structure as much as I do." It felt polite. Creepy polite. Like an HR department after a bad interview. A few people I told found it funny, called it next level administrivia. But the thing that bugged me was how normal he made it sound. He talked about fairness and mutual respect, but it felt like he was stripping away the mystery, the romance, even spontaneity. He wasn't dating a person. He was onboarding a partner. I know some relationships use contracts, prenups, business arrangements, roommate agreements. But this was a first date to legal paper blitz. I'd walked into dinner, made a connection, and then found myself holding pages of liabilities. I didn't even get to know his laugh or see him spill wine before I got handed a financial prenup. Part of me thinks he's probably out there right now, drafting clauses for his next date's desert sharing policy. He's not a bad guy. He probably thinks he's modern and smart, but he mathed the romance right out of it. So now I steer clear of guys who say they're all about communication and values. Sometimes I just want someone who texts me back, not someone who texts me a legal draft. Claire and I met on a night I wasn't supposed to be out. It was one of those random Tuesdays where I had work early the next day, hadn't done laundry, and smelled faintly like stress and takeout. A friend dragged me to a trivia night, and I ended up at the bar next to her. She had that put-together vibe, blazer, perfect eyeliner, sipping something with cucumber in it. She looked like the kind of person who journals in full sentences and answers emails on time. We got talking during one of the trivia breaks. She complimented my answers, told me she liked my voice, and asked if I was seeing anyone, just straight up like that. I thought it was bold, refreshing even. She laughed at all the right moments and said she was a therapist. I joked that I was definitely gonna overthink that. She said most people do. We exchanged numbers. We texted a lot that week. Long messages, deep stuff, not just memes, and wide. She asked really specific questions about my childhood, but made it seem like just casual curiosity. Said she was into people who reflect on patterns. I thought, wow, finally, someone who doesn't want to just talk about pizza toppings and fake their way through small talk. The first date was coffee in a weird bookstore cafe downtown. She picked it, and I was into it. Very moody lighting, mismatched chairs, too many plants. She wore a giant sweater and smelled like vanilla and something a little clinical like hand lotion from a therapist's office. We talked for 3 hours. She was so focused when I spoke. I felt like I was being studied, but in a good way. She said I was emotionally literate and self-aware, which felt like compliments wrapped in therapy buzzwords. At the end, she kissed me on the cheek and said, I think there's a lot to explore here. Again, felt a little formal, but I was into it. Something about her made me want to say more than I usually would. Second date was dinner at this quiet place with a patio. She asked about my past relationships, how I handle conflict, whether I get defensive when I'm misunderstood. I answered honestly, maybe more than I usually would. She nodded a lot. Said things like, that makes sense, and interesting pattern. I thought maybe she couldn't turn the therapist's side off, but I didn't really mind. Things were going well. We saw each other a few more times. She'd text thoughtful things like, thinking about what you said the other night, and you crossed my mind during our walk today. It felt real. Then one night she asked if we could check in. That's how she said it. Not hang out, not grab dinner, check in. I met her at this tea spot she liked, and right away I knew something was weird. She pulled out a notebook and slid it across the table. Said she wanted to share some reflections. I assumed she'd written something poetic or personal, but no. She had taken notes. On me. Literal notes, labeled with the date of each of our hangouts, bullet points, observations. I skimmed one section and it said stuff like, tends to over-explain when uncertain, potential fear of being misunderstood. Avoids direct disagreement, possible link to conflict in past relationships. Uses humor when asked about emotional needs. Defense mechanism. I stared at the page. I looked up at her. She was totally calm. Said she brought it to her therapist, her actual therapist, and they'd gone over our first date during a session. I asked her if she was joking. She said, no, I just really want to be intentional about this. I find it helpful to process relational energy in real time. I asked her why she didn't tell me. She said she didn't want to influence the interaction. That she wanted to observe me naturally, like I was a case study. Or worse, a client. Then she said, I think we're not compatible long-term based on your responses to vulnerability. I sat there blinking like, wow, okay. Didn't know we were already at the final evaluation. I asked if she even liked me, or if she was just trying to diagnose me. She said, I did like you. I think I still do. But I also have to be honest with myself about attachment dynamics. That's when I stood up. She didn't chase after me or get upset. Just said, thank you for showing up authentically. That night, I kept thinking about all the things I told her. Things I normally wouldn't say so early on. Things I only shared because she made it feel safe. But it wasn't really safe, it was just clinical. She texted me the next day to appreciate my openness and asked if I wanted a copy of the notes in case it helped me understand myself better. I didn't respond. To this day, I don't know if she meant well or if she just saw people as puzzles. Like maybe to her, connection has to be studied, processed, discussed with a third party before it counts. But I'm not a session. I'm not an insight. I still haven't deleted the message where she offered the notes. It just sits there in my inbox like a folder labeled what she saw in me. Want to keep going? The next story is Ryan. I met Ryan during the one time I re-downloaded a dating app thinking maybe I just wasn't using it right. It was the kind of phase where your brain convinces you that maybe the algorithm had you all wrong before, and this time it'll deliver someone who doesn't suck. His profile didn't scream anything suspicious. He had a few normal photos, decent style, nothing shirtless or weird. One was him holding a dog, classic, another at a wedding, one in a hoodie holding a book I'd never heard of. The bio just said, looking for something real. Tired of games. Irony is wild sometimes. We matched and started chatting. He was smooth, like way too smooth. Not cheesy, just very consistent. He texted every morning. Always asked follow-up questions. Said stuff like, I really want to get to know you, not just date you. Most guys drop that kind of line and vanish in 3 days, but he actually showed up. He'd say things like, I'm serious about this, or you're a rare kind of energy, and I'll admit, it felt nice. It felt intentional. First date was this cute little bistro he picked. He showed up early, opened the door for me, complimented my outfit in a way that didn't feel like a line, and even remembered that I was allergic to walnuts. Points for that. We talked for hours. It didn't feel like a first date, more like catching up with someone I hadn't seen in a long time. I left thinking maybe the apps aren't cursed after all. We went out again. Then again and again. It escalated fast, but not in a sketchy way. More like when you know kind of vibe. He'd text me goodnight every night, send me Spotify links to songs that reminded him of me, and ask really deep questions about my childhood, what I want in 5 years, how I define loyalty. He was all in, and it felt nice. Too nice. Sure, but I didn't want to ruin it by being paranoid. After a month, we were basically acting like we were already together. He'd hold my hand in public, he met my friends. He even brought me soup when I was sick without me asking. He'd say things like, you don't scare me. I want the hard parts too. I mean, come on. Who says that unless they're writing their own Nicholas Sparks movie? But then little stuff started to slip. He'd randomly disappear for a night, no text, and then come back with some vague reason. Nothing crazy. Just, I crashed at my friend's place or phone died. That kind of stuff. But it didn't match the hyper-consistent guy from week one. I started noticing things too, like how he'd ask for my location when I went out, or how he always wanted to know who I was with, but got cagey if I asked him the same. At one point, I asked what his friends thought of me, and he said, they love that I'm finally doing something real. That's when I got curious. I didn't soup. I just clicked around. Found his Instagram, totally normal. Found one of his tag friends, followed that trail, and then it hit me. I found a story highlight on this guy's page from months ago, captioned The Beat, and it had clips of Ryan sitting at a poker table with 3 guys laughing. One of them says something like, so you're telling me you're gonna fake a relationship for how long? And Ryan goes, as long as it takes to win. I don't catch feelings. I just act like I do better than anyone else. My stomach actually flipped. I clicked through more clips. It was part of this dumb ongoing challenge his group had. Each guy had to keep a fake relationship going for as long as possible. No breaking character, no getting exposed. Whoever made it the longest without catching feelings or getting caught won some pot of money, and apparently bragging rights among the emotionally stunted. And I was a character in his game. I texted him that night asking if he wanted to hang out. He came over like nothing was wrong. Told me I looked beautiful, kissed my forehead, and started making a Spotify cue on my speaker like this was just another cute night. I sat there watching him like I was in a completely different room than he was. It was weird, like watching a performance with the curtain half open. I didn't call him out that night. I just let it sit. I wanted to see how long he'd keep it up. The next day, he sent me flowers with a note that said, thank you for being real with me. I nearly screamed. I confronted him 2 days later. Just sent him a screenshot of the video and said, so this is what real looks like. He didn't reply for hours. And he sent me a single text. It wasn't supposed to get this far, but it did, and I don't know what's real anymore. Classic, like that fixes anything. I never responded. Blocked him everywhere. But I couldn't block the feeling that someone had basically written a script about what I wanted in a person and acted it out with zero intention of meaning it. It messed with my head way more than I expected. It wasn't just a lie, it was a full production. A fake movie I didn't know I was cast in. He probably tells himself he got too close and accidentally caught feelings. But I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I was part of some dumb game between grown men who think vulnerability is a competition. Next time someone says, I'm tired of games, I swear I'm gonna ask for receipts. And that's all.